was not. Hey guys, welcome back to Mama Bird's podcast. We are all four back here this week.
Woohoo!
And a video. So fun. This week we're just going to be kind of diving into some marriage talk. And obviously we're not all experts. A lot of us.
Not all of us.
I mean, we are all not like super newly married, but it's not like we have years and years and years of wisdom. So it's not going to be like we're telling you what to do. It's just going to be just talking about stuff. Yeah, that was kind of what I was going to say. Let's just like start with mom and go around and just say how long we've been together / married or whatever.
Yeah, dating years and married years.
Okay, so I have been married 38 years, right? Yeah, in 2 years it'll be 40 years.
That's crazy.
Wow.
So
impressive.
Met Galen when I was 16, almost 17, and got married when I was 19, I believe.
I thought you were
right?
like, I've dated many.
We should add in, like, did you ever break up?
Oh,
Yes.
that's a good one.
Yes, we did break. We broke up. Let's see. We broke up twice. The first one was probably knew I was going to get back together. The second one, I didn't think we were going to get back together, mostly because after dating for as long as we were, which back then that was a long time. I felt like we were.
What was it? 2 years?
Yeah, and I thought, well, shoot. I mean, if he's not sure he wants to marry me, maybe I'm wasting my time.
Yeah.
Mom knew her worth. She's like, excuse me.
I think he was just really scared to now looking back and knowing Galen like I do, he was just very unsure of himself.
And I mean, he was like 18-year-old boy, so it makes sense.
No, he's 3 years older than me.
Oh, he is 3 years.
Yeah.
But still, like, how old were you guys
Yeah.
when you
But
were?
he was also had a group of guy friends, and so
Yeah.
he was just doing
That's
the guy.
still-
He was still probably
Matured-
mentally 18.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maturity-wise,
probably.
He was young,
he was young.
but that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you're here 38 years later,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it all
right.
All
was
worked out.
worked out.
Yep.
Me. I never add up anything. Okay, hang on. So
It'll be 7 for you guys.
we're gonna be married 7 years. You know me, I don't do numbers. So it just, as soon as you commit, it's just
Well, I know you guys
onward.
got married right after us,
Yeah.
so we're
it'll
on like
be-
the same
We're
time
gonna be
frame.
married 7 years in March. We dated from the time we met. We met officially. Well, our first date, I should say, was January 8th. We got engaged December 8th, and then we were married that following March 31st.
Okay.
So it was all very quick
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things. But you know
A
what?
little over a year.
Once you've been around the block a few times, you know what you want.
True. Yeah, we are going to be celebrating 10 years of marriage next month. And we pretty much dated, like, there was no official, like, set, this is when we're dating.
Yeah, 'cause
versus-
you guys were
It was
talking
kind of like,
for
as
so
soon
long.
as we, like, started talking, we're like, okay, we're together now. Like, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so from the time that, like, I met Brett in person to the time we were married was exactly a year.
And you guys never broke up either.
Oh, there wasn't time.
That's kind of like, I didn't want to break up with Carson ever. Like, we didn't have a reason to, but I feel like that's a rite of passage to be like, yeah, I mean, we broke up a couple times before we got married.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's like,
Yeah.
I feel like people at mom's age, they all like, oh, we broke up so many times.
Yeah, no, it was, I mean,
Like, we didn't
part
do
of ours was long distance too. So, like, as
Yeah.
soon as we were finally together, it was just like, all
Together.
right, we're getting married. We're going to this. All worked out.
Yeah, that is, hey, you know what? It works. Austin?
What about you guys?
Gail and I will be 7 years in November, so just a couple months away. We dated approximately 6 months before we got engaged, and then our engagement was like 6 months. So
Yeah.
it was pretty quick. But
Yeah, that is-
I feel like when we were at the age, both of us, like I think I was, let's see, we met in 2015. So I was 24 when we met and 25 when we got engaged. So I feel like we were at the point that made him like about 27. Like we didn't, I don't know. I feel like we had a lot of stuff like in order and both were fairly mature. So I don't think that it would have, like it wouldn't have made sense to date forever
Right,
once
yeah.
we like kind
You
of
guys
knew.
were the oldest of all of us to get married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old were you and Carson?
Carson's a year younger than me. He had just turned 21.
I
You
do think
almost
about
turned.
though.
You guys got married in March, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And then how old were you?
I was 22. 20. No, I was 23.
Gonna turn 23.
And you were 21, right?
I was 21. Brett was 22.
I was a month away from being 20.
Yeah.
So mom couldn't even legally have alcohol at her wedding.
No.
But you did.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, for us, though, something I always think about, I'm like, this is so crazy. In 2016, which was the year that we got married, in February, Galen opened Adio. In April, we got engaged. We bought a house. We did not live in the house until we were married together, okay? I lived in the house first. Let me clarify that first. But we bought the house in August. We got married in November, and then 9 months later we were pregnant. So we did a lot of stuff in the first,
It was a busy year.
Yeah, that's
the first like from engagement to like the first year of marriage, we had a lot of stuff happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So I gathered from that if you guys need help planning a wedding really fast and on a budget,
on a budget, I will say,
we're your girls.
Like, I would pride ourselves on all of us having very, like, not cheap, but like inexpensive, affordable weddings. Especially in now.
If you
and
have
they were all very cute.
Yeah, we all had the hookup of a backyard though.
Yes. So if you
have,
but honestly, most
can
people
find
can find a backyard.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we got married. You got married in a different backyard than like me and Ashton did, and they were all very different. But you can just make anything work.
Yeah.
They were not like barbecue backyards either.
No,
I mean,
they were nice.
We did these
But
backyards
a barbecue
up really,
backyard.
really nice. Everything was like,
Yeah.
I mean, I believe it was Jordan's wedding. We had 3 seating areas. One of them was really antique looking. One of them was with a fire pit. There was another one that was more private. And everybody ate off china plates, and it was so much fun. It was really super cool wedding. It was. All of them were really cool though, because yours was so different. We had to make this,
Well,
3-story facade.
I made my
forgot.
dad
That
build
was a little
multiple.
dangerous.
Yeah, we had to build multiple walls at my wedding because I wanted it. I wanted a look, but we were still in a yard, so my dad like created this massive structure that I got married in front of that was gigantic. It was like a big shiplap wall.
I thought it was really cool because you guys both had it.
Yeah, me
Ashton and
and
Darren
yeah.
got married at the same backyard, our aunt and uncles, and it was just they both looked so different. Like you guys did it in different areas and everything. It was so cool. I loved both your weddings.
Yeah, I do think too that like you can definitely make anything work, and I feel like it's interesting because it's funny when you talk to like past generations, but I feel like that's how people did it for so long was like you got married in a church and then you had a reception either at the same church or like a backyard. But it's just become so different now with like these wedding venues. But I will say I'm like, it is funny because like when you're getting married, like you aren't going to have anything but like great thoughts about your wedding day.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to think, oh, I didn't have a
Hopefully.
great wedding venue.
I will have to say,
I don't know. I just think I'm like, we make so much out of it. And I'm like, it is just one very beautiful day. And that's how you're going to remember it if you have it in a backyard or a church or wherever you have it. So don't get too caught up in everything.
I gotta say that, like, I don't know, I'm probably alone in this, but I hope that these start making like a comeback. I would have eloped. If I would be getting married now, like, I would not be doing the wedding thing. Like, it was beautiful, and I hope that everybody else really enjoyed my wedding, and I hear that everybody did.
It was a lot of fun.
My personality and Brett, both of us would have been so much better doing like an elopement and like just being like, bye, we can have a party. And we kind of did that in Missouri because we went and had a second reception there. But I would have loved it just being like teeny tiny little ceremony because it was very stressful.
That's what I was going to say, actually. The next I was going to ask was like, would you guys do it differently? I loved my wedding and I had a lot of fun. But I think I would, like, hindsight, especially now, there's just so many different like places you could go. I would probably just go on a vacation with like my family, like all of you guys and family, and just go somewhere pretty and do like an elopement type ceremony that's more private. And I'd almost probably make it like more of like, not a community event, but like I would want like everyone to like talk and like I want it to be more like special.
Yeah,
like
I saw married again. Just renew your vows and have the wedding you want.
I saw this. I think this is like a beautiful idea. I saw a couple. They got a wedding video done, but they probably could afford it, or maybe not. I don't know their story, but like there was probably extra funds available for something like this, but they got married. It was like very small and like intimate with like families and just very close friends. And then instead of doing a full-on reception, they took like their intimate like party to this really beautiful like restaurant, and they rented out like this space for a private room, and then they did that. They had like everyone that was there like got to speak, and it was just like a very like fancy dinner at this restaurant. And I think it was even like on the water somewhere, because they didn't do a whole big reception.
See, like that's so cute. Like if you had like all of your family come and like just say like nice things about you and then give you like a piece of advice or something. Almost like a bridal shower, I guess, but like with your whole family and
your spouse.
And that be like the wedding, because like the wedding is great obviously, but there's just so many ways that you can do it. I feel like it's cool now to like do things out of the box, and you would never regret like having something more intimate.
I think the only thing I wish was different, and it ended up being fine, but I remember like being a little bit disappointed with like my photographer situation, because we had like wanted to do like after ceremony photos, like sunset photos, and she was really behind schedule. And so the ceremony got started late because she was behind, and then she couldn't work in anything after.
That's such a
so
bummer.
I just feel like that would be the one thing I would spend. I would have found a way to spend more money on that, and then not like the other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, my wedding was extremely opposite of you guys, because I got married in 1986. I was the first of the kids to get married, and the only thing we knew was you hire a florist, you hire a photographer, all these things that you have to check off all the boxes. Everything was super expensive, and we chose to get married. We were Catholic, and at the time, and we got married at St. Francis on Central and Camelback, because that's where my mother-in-law and father-in-law got married, and apparently they were like the first wedding that was done there at the chapel. So we got married in this big church, and then we had to transfer over to the Pima Country Club, which is really
That's
far.
such a drive.
It is a very far drive. And then there was just, it was just so
and it's
stuffy, and everything was just, and not only that, but here's a regret, is that when you have these weddings, a lot of times your parents want you to invite all their friends, and then that squeezes down the list for you to invite your friends. But then when you go to invite your friends, 10 years later you look back and you're not even friends with any of those friends. But you still have the family, so you have all this stuff that just happens in this big party. So that's why I looking back, I would have done a lot of things differently, including my bridesmaid dresses, which were hilarious.
Those were beautiful.
They were definitely like, peach was the color, so we had peach. Poor ladies were all dressed in peach with these little caps with peach, and everything was like, oh my gosh. I look back, I'm like, but the pictures were done by Stratford Studios, and they were
See, I feel like that's the difference between like back then too. It was always much more formal, and even now in the sense of hiring like photographers and like florists, everyone is so not traditional. So like most florists now that people hire that are like our age are not traditional florists. So everything is much more like cool and like trendy, which is nice. You guys were like, oh, the color of the season is peach. Like now no one gives a crap what the color of the season is, No.
And my wedding pictures though are very formal and very, very beautiful.
They are.
But it is funny because it was way too stuffy of an event for me. It
was for parents back then.
It was for parents. And I wore my grandmother's wedding dress, and it was very family, Italian family.
My parents, I feel like my parents were good about being like, they only invited like close friends and family, like people they felt like would want to be there. And it was like knew me my whole life and things like that. So, because they also understood that with like the cost of a wedding, you can only invite so many people and make sure that like everybody gets to invite whoever's important to them. So I appreciate that.
I remember driving back to our house after the wedding, and I remember asking Carson, I'm like, shoot, I didn't say hi to everybody. Like, you're supposed to go around, like, talk to everyone. He goes, it's okay, I did it. And I was like, where the heck was I? But also I was kind of grateful because I'm like, you expect me to get married and go and talk to all of you?
I talked to all of them.
Yeah.
I think
Jordan did talk to everybody.
I think our best move, though, probably in that wedding was we bought the miniature nothing bundt cakes. Mm-hmm. Those were delicious. Everybody got their own miniature bundt cake, if not two.
That is nice.
And that was so much cheaper than buying a full-on like wedding cake.
Yeah,
and it was
so
delicious. So
I bought myself a nothing bundt cake, and then everyone else got a donut.
That
was cute, though.
Yeah, I was like,
memories is this is so funny, but next door to our office, my dad's office, there was a janitorial supply place, and the husband and wife owned it, and they were full-on Italians.
of course.
Yeah, so my dad was just like buddies with them. Well,
Yeah.
they got an invitation to our wedding.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
That does not
Your
surprise
nails
me.
look so nice.
Thank you.
When did you get those?
So
done?
beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Look at you.
So let's dive into a different question. Since we kind of went over weddings and dating.
That wasn't even on our list. There is no weddings.
So, okay, getting kind of to dating season, but were there, like, what were your guys's, did you guys have conversations or, like, looking back, conversations you wish you would have had? Or what were, like, important things that, like, were talked about before diving into, like, marriage?
I think, okay, so I will just, the things that popped into my head when I was thinking about this question was, I remember being like upfront when we were dating, like my intentions. And this was kind of like, even before I met Carson, pretty much like in any type of like relationship I had, I was like, these are my intentions. So if you're not on board with these things, then like then this is where it ends, kind of, because I was very like set on those things. I was always very clear about like what I wanted to do career-wise as far as like being a stay-at-home mom, because I know that can be like a make or break for some people. And I was like, that is also something that could cause strain financially or whatever, however you want to look at that. So I was like, that was a clear one that I always said. And then I always like wanted to make sure we were on the same page of like what love actually is, because I feel like, especially when you're not dating for a super long time, you can be caught up in like the romance of it all and like, you know, that courting phase where everything's so sweet and wonderful and like you are in love with this person. But I was always making sure that like we understood like at a certain point, yes, we can be in love with someone, but it also is a choice that you have to make in very hard seasons, or because I know like marriage, you've been married for 38 years. It's like a roller coaster. You've been married for 10. I mean, you experience all these things a lot. Yeah. And so I'm like, I wanted us to always be on that same page where I'm like, this still is a choice that we're making and not just going to rely on feelings for that. Yeah. So that was always like, those were things that, and then obviously like some moral issues, but like, honestly, I didn't have like a ton of like preset like questions, but those were like, I do remember those being like two things that I did talk about. And luckily Carson was like, yes, yep. Like he was on the same page of that. So that was good. What about you guys?
Go for it if you have something.
I think when we initially started dating, Galen was in the middle of opening ADIO. So he was just really upfront about like, this is what I am doing. And like, you need to understand like, these are my goals and my aspirations. And if you're not on board with the process of this, then maybe you should get out now.
Galen really had the same like,
like a true 8.
Yeah. Well, I think that was fair though. Like he was really open.
It's definitely fair. To who he is, too.
Even like financially, just like explaining that like once we were married,
I'm really in debt.
Yeah. I'm really in debt, and my plan is to get out of debt as fast as possible. Yes. So those things were conversations. And then another one that he was really just like open and fair about. I don't think that the timing of it was one he would have liked because his friend brought it up before he did, but he wanted to make sure like we would be on the same page when it came to like our view on like health and just like some decisions regarding like, obviously we both wanted kids, and so he was like, these are non-negotiables for me when it comes to health. Yes. So we talked about that, and then obviously like all of our, like what we believed about our faith, what we believed about like, I mean, everyone always has the sex conversation of like, what are our boundaries? We always had the boundaries conversation, but I feel like I was just, for the most part, we were on the same page on the same page with everything. But even things that I'm like, I had never considered this before, I'm very like open to hearing alternative perspectives. And Galen's very knowledgeable about things. So, and also always like, please ask me questions and like do your own research. And it's funny how like I started to form like very secure opinions upon doing my own research about things. So I don't know.
We did have those conversations too. Yeah. I left those out because I was like, yeah, we had those.
Yeah.
But my personality was like, Carson, you can research it, but you know I'm right.
But
so.
I do think that it's interesting. Like, I feel like most of our conversations that you would consider like, oh, these are need to have conversations before you get married. We had those, but at the same time, I feel like we've definitely grown a lot since then. Yeah. Like we've had the basic conversations of like our beliefs are the same, but then like having to go through situations where you're like, okay, now we have to like actually,
like where things are tested.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know. I think that you're a little bit like, as long as you know that, all right, I can get through stuff with this person. This is the person I want to go through things with. And we have the same, like, down to our foundation. Like, our foundation is the same, and we're always going to come down to the foundation. I feel like we knew that pretty quickly.
And that's good. That's, like, important.
I feel like marrying into our family is probably, like...
yes, that is
a little bit, like, scary.
Intimidating.
I know that, like, Brett and I, when we
I don't feel that way.
I'm so glad.
It's so funny.
That's because you were just so in love with
Galen.
And you had little, like, glasses on.
But I still feel that way. I don't feel like...
Well, yeah, because, I mean, we are wonderful.
I don't know. I just don't feel like maybe... I don't know. I just feel like there are a lot of people that I've met that I'm like, whew, I don't know if I could be in that family. Like, I mean, we all can say tough. That, right? But I've never felt that way. Like, I always have felt like you guys, I mean, okay, here's an example of, like, the goodness of your family. And I'm going to talk about both of you first. Okay, you made our first date, like, you were so nice and so fun, and you could have been, like, the sister that asked all the hard questions. You did not do that. You were so fun.
I knew Galen was doing that.
Apparently, I didn't talk, so I don't think he asked any hard questions. But then, like, Jordan, okay, a lot of our date nights were at their house with them. With Jordan.
Galen lived with Jordan and Brett for a little while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then before we got married, we bought a dog that lived at Jordan's apartment, and Galen was gone all day, every day. And Sax pooped everywhere, and she never got upset.
Sax is my first foster.
Yeah. Loved him. Black lab who just
loved him.
Yes. And your mom was so like you were so nice all the time. So
But you know what? Like this was easy with you. But like my mom, growing up, like it was always something that she even said, like one day your sisters, your brother, like they're going to get married and you need to love their spouse. And that was always like from, I would say, early on. Like I remember that being talked about in high school. And so kind of you grow up and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to love their spouse. And like Ashton is easy to love, but like it is like sometimes, not sometimes you, but like, sometimes families don't have that like foundation of, well, I love my brother, so I'm going to love his wife. A lot of people have that backwards, which is so weird. I don't know why you wouldn't want to like have that relationship, but I would say that was a good on you thing that I'm going to do too, like with my kids being like, hey, you love your sister, you love your brother, so whenever they get married, you're going to love who they love also. Because that's like what family is. And it's back to the like, you have to choose to love people too.
I think also like saying that with your kids growing up, then even each kid will be like, wow, they'll learn to really value their siblings and their parents' opinions and factor that into like relationships of like, is this someone that I want to bring into my own family and the family dynamic? And like, is it someone that can merge well with my families, which is obviously the goal. And I feel like if you trust your family, like if you grow up in a home where you're like, I really value my parents and my siblings' opinions, and then they have concerns, you're going to factor that in.
And I remember like thinking about like Jordan and like you and being like, I see like, how they fit together so well. You're like, this complements his personality. Like it makes it easier to like when you pay attention and when you do truly love like your siblings, you're like, oh yeah, Brett is so good for her in these ways. And Ashton is so good for Galen in these ways, because it makes it like, oh yeah, I see why they like love this person. And it just like, that's why, from marriage to your core family, from what you grew up in, it's so important to set those expectations as parents to be like, we are all on a team, so you need to like your teammates and you need to get along well with them. And it's the same thing, you can bring that into marriage. Like your wife, your husband, that is your partner. And that's your teammate. You guys are on the same team, same goal. You guys are not running towards opposite ends of the field. You guys are going to the same place. So like work together and make it work. And it's the same within a core family too. What is because I cut you off.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I think it's important to, like, I think so many times when you're dating to not have important conversations because you're like, well, I don't want to turn them off, or like, we'll just wait till we know each other more, or like have a lot of reasons to like excuses, wait to have those big conversations, and sometimes don't even have them until after you're married. But like for Brett and I had already been engaged. I had already dated people. When I met Brett, I'm like, I'm going to just test this out.
That was a bomb because most people don't know you were engaged.
Oh, before. Yeah, I was. I was young. But, like, I'm going to just drop all this on him because if he wants to run away, that's fine. And I don't need to waste my time. Yeah. Especially once you hit a certain age. It's not like I was old. I was only 21. But I was like, I don't want to do this whole thing again. So if he's not on board for the things that are most important to me, then I don't need to waste any of my time. I don't need to give any of my heart away that doesn't need to be given away. And so I remember, because we were long distance at first, we would Skype, and we'd Skype for a long time. Like we'd Skype for hours just talking. So, which is a cool thing. Like I think that's a cool part of distance relationships, because the whole communication without any physical aspect of it is like, it's very helpful for a relationship. Just
like, you do a lot of activities most of the time that can steer conversations versus like you guys probably just had to always have more like not serious. I mean, it could be fun, but you probably had more serious conversations.
Well,
than
because
a lot of people.
Like I was going to say, like I remember probably one of the, I don't know, we met each other in like September. It had to have been like October where I was on the phone with him and I was like, so, hey, I just thought I'd run these things by you. It's very important to me that I have a home birth. It's very important to me that we raise our kids in this way. I also really want to stay home with the kids, not because I don't want to work, but because I want that to be my work. I don't really like Halloween that much. And like, I'm really close to my family, so I probably will never be moving. So what do you think?
Like, that's the best way to do it.
So I literally like, all the like really important things, I like just that were like, whoa. obviously had to process them, and we've had much greater conversations after that first one, but it's not like I was hiding to like at one point for him to be like,
You're like boom,
boom, like, and then it became like a bomb.
Right.
Hey, that's better than like going out to dinner with a friend and Galen goes to the bathroom and the friend starts asking you questions that he assumes you've already talked about with Galen, and you're like,
You're
I
like,
need
yeah,
I need a little bit of a stiffer drink for this conversation because I don't know any of this.
That is
And I feel really blindsided right now. And do you not like me? Is that why you're doing this? And what do I do right now?
Yeah, I'm like, hey, I want to have a lot of kids too, by the way. I know we've never even kissed yet, but just so you know, I want to have like a lot of kids. Hope that's cool with you.
That's the best though, because it just lays it all out there, and it does make not that you need to be more attractive because you already are, but like you just knew what you wanted, and that's an attractive thing where it's like I'm secure in myself enough to be like, this is it, so take it or leave it. I will say I feel like we did good at that because I did the same thing.
Yeah,
That's good.
more people need to do that.
I am
What'd you do to us?
very, very different than you guys, my experience.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't apologize for it because I learned a lot. I grew up a lot. I got saved
That's
along
why
the way.
we are the way we
and
are,
that's
though.
why you guys are the way
Yeah.
you are.
So thank you.
So, Dad and I didn't have any morals, really, apparently.
You know what? That's an 80s thing.
and we were, and it didn't seem to be even something that mattered. I mean, he lived out in Tempe. I drove out there every single night. I would leave his house around midnight, 1 o'clock-ish, and I'd call him when I got home okay. This was just something we just did all the time, and then eventually it's just, you know, I mean, we didn't have boundaries.
Whatever works.
Yeah, whatever worked, we did. We were.
Mom's like, what are boundaries, really?
Yeah, I was like, how do you say?
How you say promiscuous?
Okay, I was
No.
way. I was not.
She was like, I want to be clear.
I only had one
Just
other boyfriend my
kidding.
whole life, and that was a long-term boyfriend. So really, I've only had 2 boyfriends my whole life. So
Did
I'm
you know
married
You
to
and
my
me
second
both.
one.
Did you notice how Ashton really stuck up for you when I said promiscuous?
I know. I love
She's
you.
like,
You're
no.
so
Why
sweet.
would you say that about your mother?
You're so sweet. But we did end up getting married. Things that we never talked about was our religion, because we both were Catholic. We didn't talk about kids because we were married before he found out I didn't want any. Sorry, that all changed.
Yeah,
And then,
thanks. Just kidding.
and, you know, I didn't go to college because I really was thinking, oh, I'm just going to open up my own business, which I did. And
I like your confidence.
yeah, I was very strong, opinionated person that really was a go-getter, and I just knew what I wanted. We got married, and, you know, the first 2 years were pretty good.
It's a great foundation.
Yeah, it got scary after 2 years, and I literally found myself being like, ooh.
Wasn't that because you found Jesus? So then it was like everything started to get shook up.
It took.
Oh,
us-
yes.
It took a huge fall. You know, and a lot of times, you know, people will have these stories, their salvation stories, where they had to reach the bottom before they got to the top, and that was us. I mean, I felt like, ooh, I don't know if this is gonna work after 2 years, and I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna end up divorced like my mom. And literally, God is so good, because I can't even tell you, I can't begin to tell you how this all took place or whatever. But I decided I'm going to start going back to church. So I started going back to church, and then I thought, well, I'm going to go to confession, because I'm going to go tell him how much I don't like my husband. I'm going to go confess this.
Your dad loves hearing.
And, you know, some of you guys are going to laugh at this next thing, but the priest actually gave me a Bible to go read, told me where to go buy a Bible and what to start reading. So I started reading James. And then I needed a ride home from church one day, and this sweet little old lady who was my mom's friend, she was a grandma type. I was sitting in her back seat, and she had this little flyer in there for a Christian radio station, and I memorized the call numbers. And when I was driving by myself, I was listening to it secretly. and I heard somebody say, hey, if God created the earth and he created everything in it, and he went on and on and on with all the things God created, he goes, and you don't think he can fix your marriage, he goes, then you don't understand who God is. And I want to cry.
Isn't that crazy that God knew that they were going to say that, so he put that number in your head?
He put all that stuff in order for me. And then literally the same lady whose car I was in, she called me up probably 2-3 weeks later and said, hey, there's a Bible study at this senior trailer park right by your house, and I'm leading it if you'd like to come. And I thought, well, shoot, I have to say yes, because all these things are stirring up in me. And those of you that know me, I love seniors. And I mean,
Yes, you do.
I do.
Yes, you do.
When you guys all went back, when you were all in high school and I didn't have anything to do, I started volunteering over at a senior independent living facility, and I just love it. And I got my caregiver's license, but anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, so anyway, I ended up getting saved. I came home, I told Galen about it, and I was all excited. He wasn't super excited about it, but it didn't take long. We found a Christian church to go to. Our marriage turned around. I couldn't wait to have kids. And yeah.
Here you are.
Here we are.
Here you are, 38
It
years
just
later.
changed- Yep, absolutely changed my life.
So
And
would you say Jesus is the answer?
Jesus is the answer. He's the answer he's the rock of every good marriage. I mean, yeah.
That's
And
true.
if you have a good marriage and you don't know Jesus, you probably can't imagine it being any better, but it can be.
It's true, because that's like, I mean, you can have that same like foundation on like your belief, like not beliefs, but like other things. But if you don't have the same foundation on like how you like how you look at like life and like salvation,
Right.
it is going to be a little harder.
Yeah.
Not that, but that just means your story might be just so beautiful how it ends up.
Yes,
Everyone's going to have a
true.
beautiful story.
Yes.
Yes.
Because that's how God works.
And you know, the family goes beyond, it goes into my family. So you guys are talking about Dad and I's family, but then I've got my mom and that whole family, which I stemmed from, which we are also very, you know, the way we look at things is not like the way most people look at things. So
Yeah.
Dad had to conform to that as well, which wasn't hard. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes when the doors open wide and you see
Yeah.
the light.
Well,
you're
and I
like,
think that when
I
things
get
make
it.
sense, it's easier
Yeah.
too. And like if you've never like questioned things and someone that you love is saying, "Well, this is how I look at things," it makes it easier to look at
Right.
situations.
Right.
Okay, let's rapid fire through
Yeah.
some things.
Okay.
Just for fun. What do you guys, so like as far as like date nights or like intentional like time, what is like your guys' favorite way of doing that? Like if you just could like
Intentional time.
intentional
Yeah.
time
With our
dates.
spouse?
Yeah, with your spouse. Like
Okay.
jumping now into like our
Oh,
life
sorry.
now.
I should have had.
No, you're
okay.
good. And like we can just group a couple of these in. Like
Yeah.
dates, like what do date nights look for you guys? How often? What does just like time every day? Like how do you make time for each other?
I know that like for every couple and family, it's going to look different, but I will say that for Galen and I, probably in the last like couple of months or so, we found a babysitter and we committed to one date night every single week. And that's just something that's been important to us for a long time, but we've just never been able to like find someone that could watch our kids at like the time that we needed. I mean, there's a lot of factors once you have kids, but I do think that that's been like super beneficial for our marriage, just making sure that we are having a date night every week or as often as possible if it can't be every week, just so that we can have that one-on-one time where there isn't like, not that kids are a distraction, but it is hard to like have meaningful time together when you're also parenting. It's just difficult. So we've been really good about doing that. And then, obviously I love getting away with my husband, but that is more of like a once a year or like when your kids are of the age where you can leave them with someone and you aren't breastfeeding or putting them to bed every night, that type of a situation. But yeah, I just think it's important. Try to find the time. You're always going to have like meaningful conversation and just like have that time where you aren't in like the mode of parenting, which I am in all other times.
It's so true. What about you?
I think that, we kind of do the whole weekly date night. I know that we're like fortunate to make that work. I know that that's not everybody can do that, but I would say to try to prioritize time with your husband because it's so easy when you have kids. Like, I am the most emotionally involved with my kids, where I feel like if I'm separated from them, it's like detrimental to their well-being or something like that. And so I've had to work through a lot of that stuff, but at the end of the day, I think that your relationship with your spouse is the most important. Beside your relationship with the Lord, like, that should be the most important thing, even when you're raising kids, because I think if you have a strong relationship with your husband, strong relationship with the Lord, like, you're going to be better in parenting, and your kids need to see that your husband is your priority in your life.
Yeah.
And so even if it's just like, okay, well, this day we're going to set up a date after they go to bed, or like this day our sister or our mom is going to be able to take them. We're going to do something intentional, even if it's just at home, making time where it can just be you two. And even if it's just something simple and silly, it's just good to have time alone. It just is so like connecting, and it just really will do such wonders for your marriage.
It gives you something to look forward to, like, during the week too. Because I would say, as moms, especially, like, every day is like Groundhog Day, and you're just like, oh my gosh, you start to question your sanity, your purpose. Even though you're living your purpose in that moment, you're just like, why in the world are we doing this? And you just need like that moment of reprieve where you're like, okay, I'm with a dude who thinks I'm cute, and like we're just alone by ourselves, and it like refills you, and like that's so important. And me and Carson, like, us going on dates, Carson can't eat certain things, and we don't like have a lot of like extra time to go do things. But I will say the fun thing that this is a great thing for people who don't get to like leave the house necessarily a lot. Like, we do things at home. Like, luckily Carson is always down for like my ideas, because I'm like, me and him, one of the things we like to do is we do like to paint together, which is like funny because he's not like a paint, like that's not something he does all the time. But like, if I buy us like 2 canvases, I'm like, hey, after Chip goes to bed, let's paint and have a glass of wine. He's like, okay, cool. And I'll buy like the doughy cookie dough. We'll make cookies, watch The Office, and paint. Those are sometimes like the best nights, because it's just like intentional time. And honestly, even if we don't plan something like that, if one of us is like, hey, let's not do phones tonight, we will literally go put our phones on chargers and just be with each other. And it's so sad how much of a difference that makes, because it shows you how much we're all on our phones, and how it's just like, even if we're next to each other, like, I will online shop just sitting next to him. Like, my feet will be on his lap, but I'll still be scrolling something, so I'm not paying attention to him. And it's like, as soon as you put your phone away, it's like, oh, this is so crazy. You guys have conversation about whatever you're watching, your day. Like, it is so good to have like those intentional times. And so I would just encourage, like, even if you cannot do like a date night once a week, which I think is so important, then to do no phone nights, or put like the kids to bed early, make cookies, make brownies, do something that is just like together, and be like, okay, let's do this. Sit outside, make a cup of coffee, go sit outside. Like, do something to where you're just with each other.
Put some lingerie on.
It just forces those, those conversations, and it makes it much more fun. And it's so important too. I'm sure you would agree, Mom, because you've been married longer, but like, I'm a big person on like, don't stop like dating and flirting with me just because we're married and have kids. Because it's really easy to do, like, especially for moms, when we are all like worn out at the end of the day and all that. It's like really easy to not flirt and like not do those things. But like, it's so important. And I think that's one thing, like, we all have our things, but like, I would say that me and Carson have always been really, really good at being affectionate. And that's something that's like very important to me. Like, I'm a very affectionate person, and I really like PDA, and I really like just like touching all the time. And I would say that's like what we're really good at, even at home when it's just like our family. Like, we're always touching each other. If we pass each other, like, I'm rubbing his arm, rubbing his back, or something, because it keeps that.
It's good for your kids to see too. Like,
yeah,
not. And I think when you say PDA, you don't mean like anything that's like crazy.
Doing it on the counter.
Yeah.
No, not like that.
But
I mean,
just
like,
the
when you're
fact
with-
that like
yeah.
if you hold, like you were saying, like if you hold hands, or like if your kids see you like hold hands,
Yes.
give each other a kiss, hug, like all of those things, that's important because they don't understand like everything like relationally, but if they see their parents like physically loving each other, then they know the importance of that. you
When
know?
I say PDA, I mean like when I'm at like a grocery store, I'm like rubbing his arm, I'm like rubbing his
You're
back.
making sure everyone knows you're with
I'm
him.
like, yeah, I'm marking
with
my
you.
territory. That is what I
Yeah.
do. I mark territory very well because unfortunately I am
So,
one of the jealous.
We did not have, like, I didn't have extra money when we were younger. So our lingerie came from my imagination and goodwill.
My
Get it,
imagination.
girl.
absolutely
Get it, girl.
Yeah.
Had the most fun shopping and making up, outfits, and that was fun. That
Yeah.
was really fun.
I think guys just appreciate like that you think about it.
And
They
little
like
notes
yeah.
and questionnaires. Oh, I would leave little questionnaire things. Check yes, check
Yeah.
no. Do you like this? Do you like that? You want to do this? You want to do that?
Mom loves questionnaires.
I love questionnaires.
Maybe you can write
I
one
still
up
like
and then we'll
lists.
post one.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a little questionnaire.
So what's that look like once you don't have kids in the house?
Do you still do
Yeah.
Like,
questionnaires?
I still
Well, as far as like dates and stuff like that, because you
yeah.
guys are always
Yeah.
together without
Right.
kids. What's that look like?
the weirdest thing I've never said to you guys, but I literally remember her last day not in the house.
Aw.
I'm gonna cry because I can't handle that day.
She's like, I don't want to think about my kids leaving us.
Like my
Days
kids
not
are not allowed to
It
leave.
was so weird.
Yeah.
We left the bedroom door open, and I felt
Oh,
like a
she's
teenager.
gonna cry.
Was it sad or just
three.
happy?
It was weird. I don't know. I can't.
Yeah.
We both were just so weirded out by it because we're used to her walking in the door.
Yeah.
It also doesn't it? Okay, because I feel like this as a parent, it is, and I haven't been a parent that long, but I'm sure for you it's like to another level. I really hardly remember a time before my kids, like with just Galen and I. I mean, granted, ours was probably less than most people,
had,
but
like,
it is, yeah, 18 months. But it is like it's weird. I feel like once you have kids, even like it's weird for me to remember a time without Blair. Like obviously, I had Cooper for it was me, Galen, and Cooper for a long time, but it's like it's weird for me to remember a time without both of my kids.
Yeah.
The only funny thing I remember about before I had kids is we had a little bar, like everyone has these bars.
Islands?
And on one side of it, we covered it with a mirror down
Oh
there.
gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
That's enough.
That's enough. That's enough.
So we'd be like, want to do mirror night tonight?
Mirror night.
Tears gone.
Tears are gone, and now images of other things.
I can't remember anything else other than that was just a funny thing.
I do have a mirror in my room.
Oh goodness.
At the perfect position.
That's so funny. Yeah, I don't remember
You
anything
need to
before
get a
kids
mirror.
that much, but
Yeah.
that is
Which that kind of is just like one of those things too before kids. We had too much, like not too much. I shouldn't say too much. In my little mind, we had too much time before kids because we were trying to have babies for
Yeah.
so long. But if you are in that season of like waiting to have kids or wanting kids and it's just not happening and you're not understanding it, enjoy it. Like pray specifically for the Lord to like let you enjoy your husband and your time while trying to have babies like in a different way, because it can just have this like sad thing around it. And I look back and that was like such a sad time of my life, and I wish I would have just been like, wow, this is such a blessing that we get this time. Yes, it's sad and happy can coexist.
Yes.
And so just try to enjoy that time together before the babies
when you're
come.
young, you're just in such a hurry.
The
And
next
think things are
thing.
supposed to happen in such a way. And I understand, honey, because I remember you going through all that. But when you're far from it, I mean, not far, but
Yeah.
So when you're outside looking in, I'm like, what are you in such a hurry for?
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. It's going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And most people just, the minute bad things happen, you're just not getting pregnant or you're miscarrying, all those things, they are sad. They're horrible. But it's part of your story. And there's other women that are going to need
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
love and support.
It's hard to
And-
see that
and it
though when you're
changes.
like going through it,
Yes.
because in your mind you're like, I'm doing something that is for like the kingdom. Like I want, like I believe this is like why God, like what my purpose is. Like you believe all these things that are all really, really good intention things that are true, but it's like you never, in those moments, in those seasons, it's heartbreaking and hard. So it's like, how do I even see this from God's perspective? Because it's like, well, why do you need to teach me whatever you're teaching me? Like, I can, like, do this, you know? But then it is true. Because I always believe, like, not to get too emotional, but it's like, it is true. When you go through something, I truly believe that God is like, this is for someone else, for you to help them. Because I am entrusting you this, like, this sadness and this pain, because I know that like what your wisdom and like what you are going to offer somebody else through this is going to be so much bigger, and you are going to be blessed. Like that's like a big thing, but it's so hard to see those things.
Plus, I think that people, just because babies are born all the time, we just take it for granted. It's a miracle.
It's so crazy.
The really things that have to happen.
Well, and like the chances
for a baby.
Actually.
Two cells coming together and continually building on each other and creating every single organ and cell and tissue for a baby to form. That's a miracle. And you know, because so many babies don't make it, we don't even know the ones that don't make it through that process so many times, you know. But just be encouraged, because when you can relax and enjoy your family, enjoy your husband, you're going to do things that it's going to happen.
And like, I just will say, I mean, it is hard. I don't want to diminish that at all. It's very, very hard. Babies are such a blessing, and it just goes to show you that they just really, truly are. And also, last thing, because I just don't want to make this sad, but like, honestly, your marriage will grow so much through that too. Like, I think that Brett and I, like going through that season of our marriage just brought us so close and got us to like really like get to know each other on a different level. And it, looking back, because it didn't feel like it in the midst of it, but now it was like that was a blessing in a really weird way to our marriage, and we like really got to know each other, got to like love each other in a different way, and it was great. So
I will say too, like something that probably came from that, which I know me and Mom say this because we kind of joke and we're like, we want to just communicate with our husbands like Jordan and Brett communicate, because that communication probably came a lot from like that time too, because communication is huge. And I am not the best, like weirdly, I'm a great communicator if I have to write a letter to somebody and like tell them exactly. But if I'm face to face with a situation, I am not a great communicator. And I, in relationships, I'm very like codependent. So like that works against the communication thing. So I look to Jordan and Brett as like great communicators, because they really like, as soon as something approaches any situation, they talk about it right then and there. It's almost like they don't even think about the repercussions of something, because they know there's not repercussions. They bounce things off each other, even if it sounds like, which when you're around them, it doesn't sound like they're fighting, but like they fight. Like Nan last week, she even goes, you guys fight so cute, because they were like bickering about something, and I'm like, they're just communicating, but they're just good at communicating, and that's probably something that like grew.
Well, that's just like a level of trust too, trusting that like no matter what the other person says, like it ultimately, like there's a level of trust where it's like, I know that we're gonna be okay, so I have the comfortability of saying this, knowing that like even if it's upsetting, like we are gonna work through something that probably needs to be worked through.
And I think that comes from just like with anything, when you practice, it just comes naturally. And so that's kind of something that Brett and I just always have spoken our minds on. I don't have a problem like just letting him know how I feel about something he says, and he doesn't have a problem letting me know how he feels, which at the beginning probably was very uncomfortable and like awkward and like kind of hurtful. But we just got to a point where we're just like, if he says something that I'm like, no, I disagree with you, or like that hurt my feelings, I just tell him right away. But it's a natural reaction. That's not something that just like came naturally. It is a natural reaction now because we just do it. But it's so nice to just know that like And I agree with you that it's a like comfortability thing, because now I'm like, at the end of the day, we're going to fight. But at the end of the day, we know that we're not going to be mad at each other.
Yeah.
Or like that there's going to be anything left unsaid, because Brett knows exactly where I stand on everything.
And that there's love too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we get to the end of the day where we definitely have fights where like in the middle of it, it's really upsetting. But at the end of it, we always are like, okay, well, we at least know what the other person's thinking.
And there's resolve.
Yeah. We do make sure we like resolve at the end of it. So,
you probably never have to worry about, like, with really great communication, you don't have to have the fear of like resentment, because I think sometimes if things go left unsaid, then the person who chose to leave them unsaid can potentially build up like resentment towards the other person. It's not saying that that's fair, but they had something that they needed to work through, never vocalized it, and then that built up inside of them.
yeah.
I feel like that's kind of like, I was telling the girls about a quote. I think it's from, we all love them, so it's fine me saying this, but Shawn Johnson and her husband, Andrew.
I need to follow them. I don't follow
I
them.
love
On their podcast, I think it was her husband, Andrew, who said or maybe it was Shawn, I don't know. One of them. We love you. They said your spouse is the best reflection of yourself. And so if your spouse says something, comes to you with something that they see in you, and most of the time I think they were referencing like a negative thing, then you need to listen and you need to not get defensive, because you trusted that person enough to marry them and build a life with them. So you should trust them enough to listen to what they're having to say about yourself. And like, that's really hard, because I think as humans, like, our nature is to be defensive and to be hurt. But I think that you have to like, and probably you and Brett have built this trust, probably all of us to some degree, like, where if Galen came to me and said, hey, like, I'm noticing this in you, and like, I just like want to talk about it, I would naturally want to be like, what? But I think because I love him and I know him and he wouldn't want to do anything to hurt me, and he's one of the good guys. Like, if he said that to me, I'd be like, okay, like, I probably need to listen to this, like, deep down. Yeah. Like, I might initially be like, whew. But like, deep down, I would be like, Galen wouldn't say this unless it was true, because he loves me more than anyone except for Jesus. And if he's bringing it to me, like, there's validity to it. And like, I need to at least like think about it.
Anytime I've been called out by Carson, immediately I know it's right. And I've immediately, every time I'm like, I've never heard it vocalized like that. That's rude that you would say that about me. But I'm like, I know, like, totally. I've never like been able to see myself in that way, but I'm like, I know, because I am a very opinionated person, and I think that most of the time I'm right. Which, right, Mom? I'm mostly right.
I'd say. I will say that you girls are pretty wise. You know,
Just kidding.
You really are. I mean, if I have any problems myself, I do not hesitate to call or share or anything to get your input, because
you trust.
That's because you prayed for wisdom for them for all those years.
It was a prayer. True. It was, if you only pray one prayer over your kids from the time they're little to never end. But I always prayed wisdom, because I always thought, I have no idea what these kids are going to face in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I know if I pray wisdom over them, then that's where,
huge.
He always says yes, right?
Yeah,
he always says yes to wisdom.
I feel like too, it is important between like whether you're early married or like it's never too late to start, but having that open communication to be able to say things like that and to just do it. Like, it feels uncomfortable the first time, but just to do it, because what can happen is when you have a feeling about your spouse, or even anybody in general, but especially the most important relationship is your spouse. If you have a feeling and you're hurt by something, you will continue to live your life with that feeling.
Right.
Yes.
And what if it's a wrong what if it's a wrong feeling, or what if it's something that you don't fully understand?
Right.
And so if I tell Brett, hey, this bugs me when you do this, or like this is hurtful, then it gives him a opportunity to explain why that is, why he's viewing that. We all have different worldviews. We all are different people. We raise different. And then that gives it time from the very beginning. We squash that. It's not like a year from now, we've had a year of every time he does something, it's like, oh, he's doing that again.
And you're making up stories
and you're
in your
making
head.
all these stories in your mind, and it just makes it worse and worse and worse.
I did that.
Yeah. But then, like, what happens if, like, the first day you had that feeling, you just said, that irritates me. And then he's like, well, I do that because this is how I grew up. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Let's work through that instead of a year of that festering.
Well,
Yes.
So when you're married 38 years, you automatically just feel like you already know everything he's thinking.
And
He already thinks everything I'm thinking, because we really do. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times a week or during the day that I will get ready to say something and he'll say it. It is crazy, and that's one thing that I think is another miracle, how God joins two and they become one. It is really, really weird. But that is so important, and so many times I do look to Jordan and Brett because they do have a gift in how they communicate. And I, after being married all this time, I don't communicate all the time, and I feel like I'm a good communicator. But there'll be things I allow to fester because I'm thinking, why the heck does he keep doing that? Or why isn't this happening? Or doesn't he know that bothers me? And I don't say it right away. I feel like I can just pray it away. And you know what? Prayer is awesome, but straight out communicating directly and hitting it right at the root is going to always be the best thing. And there's so many women out there that know exactly what I'm talking about, because you have been married a long time and you think you know each other and you are just going to let it go, and it does fester, like you said. And you think you have good communication, but really technically you probably don't have that good a communication. I mean, even when I look back at a younger marriage, when I did go through my miscarriages, I had horrible communication.
Yeah.
I never shared any of that. And then you see your daughter go through it, and she is so open and so emotional about it. And I'm like, this is, I just need to get better. But we all need to get better. And that's what's so great about marriage is we are, it's something that every day you work to make better. And with God in the center of it, it is going to undoubtedly become an awesome marriage. And then you get to raise your kids in that, and you get to teach them from what you've learned. And
it's literally never too late to start.
Never.
I just said that, but like, just if you have something you want to change, just do it now. Don't think about the past.
Even 38 years, like I said, we are learning every day. We're learning all the time, and we are growing closer and closer, even though you think you're already so close. And you know what? That's something I think we should touch on too, because on another episode, because when you're young, you think you know everything, and you think, oh, how could this get any better? But believe me,
I think like Galen,
things do.
It's important to remember too, like Galen and I are very different. Like we have, like I talk about, the important thing for us was always that we have the same foundation, which we do, and like we have the same vision for our family, but it doesn't mean that we're not different people. Like we're very different, and oftentimes like our perspectives or how we handle things are very different. But if I don't vocalize like something that's bothering me, I can't have the expectation that he's going to meet me where I'm at, because he most of the time doesn't see things from my perspective or understand like my feelings about something. And it's not a negative on him, but if you don't vocalize it, like you can't expect them to like meet you where you're at or understand like your feelings in it, especially because men and women are hardwired so differently. So where he may see something so black and white, for me it's like filled with a lot of emotions and like different things. Like I can't expect that he's going to understand that. And I don't know, it was cool when you were talking about like the two becoming one, because I'm like, yeah, like you aren't meant to, like I don't think I think one of the things, the intention of marriage is like to help each other like draw closer to Christ. And I'm like, but if you aren't involving your spouse in anything that you're going through, like you're trying to just figure it out for yourself and not involve them or bring them into something, like you don't want them to have a burden. I'm like, you can't expect them to like help or,
I will also say, before we like wrap up this episode, I know you have another thing to say, Mom, but like if you're, as far as like communicating and like holding things back, kind of like what we're talking about, if you are someone who has come from like other relationships and maybe those relationships were like toxic or like not good in ways to where like if you communicated you wouldn't get like that loving reciprocation. I will say, like, for me personally, like, it was very hard for me to be open and like communicate exactly how I was feeling, because I was always very protective of my husband and like what he may think, of like my projections of what he may think, if that makes sense, because of like past relationships where I was bringing those insecurities of mine into a new relationship, to where when I was like actually took a step back and looked at this and I was like, hey, this is how like they do it and it works so well. Like, do you like, I wonder if that would work for me. And it was crazy because I just started, which it's like a muscle you have to build, where you just become like naturally like, okay, I'm just going to say what I'm thinking at this moment, which if you are in a loving relationship, that should not be a problem. So when I started like actually voicing my concerns right at the forefront of them, it was like so funny, because there were so many times where I actually was like shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's so sweet. Like, that was such a nice response. But it's like, well, of course it is. Like, this is the man I love. He loves me. Like, why wouldn't it be this way? Or like, he's so understanding of this. It's like, well, of course, why wouldn't it be this way? So you need to be very wary of like bringing things from other relationships into like a marriage too, because those things, that just goes to show you that anytime you're in a relationship with somebody, like, it does leave an impression on you in some sort of way. So it's really important to just be aware of that.
Give your spouse the opportunity.
And give them the opportunity to do that.
To be different.
So
wrapping up, I just wanted to read one thing, because during the week, I know a lot of you guys have probably followed this gentleman. His name's Jay Shetty. And yeah, he has a great quote, and I copied it for this episode. It says, "A bad relationship can be saved with good communication. One conversation, one apology, one interaction can change the direction." And I just want to encourage you this week to step out, and if something's bothering you, say it right then, nip it in the bud, and then join us again next week as we continue this conversation on marriage and just talking about our spouses. And then if you have questions, we want you to drop them for us. We really want to answer some of your questions, whether you're going through something hard, whether you have some advice you want us to share that would benefit our audience, or even if you just have some funny questions. We're going to talk some funny.
And we're going to talk about sex.
Yeah, we're going to
week.
talk about sex.
Of course.
We'll talk about some other things too, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, hit us up with some questions. We really are encouraged by when you guys do that. And remember, we got everyone from 7 years to 38 years here.
Yep.
Right?
Woo!
So yeah,
got
we
lots of different viewpoints.
lots of different viewpoints. So anyway,
Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
I feel like, to be this person again, but I feel like I just want to wrap in a prayer, because
yes,
I just
let's do
I
it.
do.
Let's hold hands.
So, okay. Dear God, I just lift up just every woman that's listening to this podcast, Lord. You know exactly where they're at in their relationship, just in life. And I pray, God, from the people who are not in relationships that are just desiring it, to the women who are married and just in the trenches right now. God, I just want to lift up even the people that are in really amazing marriages, Lord. We just know that there can even be greater just success and amazingness out there, Lord. I just pray and lift up every single one of them. I pray that you give them wisdom and confidence and just joy and love for their husband, Lord, that is just new, that they've never felt before. I pray that you just help and meet them where they're at, Lord, the ones that are struggling and just feeling like giving up, God, that you would just give them just a new love and new just journey and open-mindedness, Lord, that you would just help them on this road of marriage, Jesus. We just love you. We thank you for marriage. We thank you for all of our husbands and just how great they are. We just lift up each one of these women to you, Lord, that you would just encourage us this week. We love you so much. We thank you for everyone who's listening right now, and we just give you this week. We love you. Amen.
Amen. Love you guys.
Love you.
Okay.
Have a great
See you
week.
next time.